Hi, have you ever been undecided on whether to slab your comic or simply keep it raw? Well, stay tuned because that's going to be the discussion today, where I'll give you my suggestions and opinions on whether or not you should slab or keep your comic raw. Hey, fellow YouTubers and fellow comic collectors, this is Joe from .cop Comics, and today I'm going to again give you my take on whether or not you should slab your comic or keep it raw. But before we get started, I just wanted to give you a little history about myself. This is my third appearance on YouTube, and I appreciate all the subscribers and the comments and the likes. One of the comments was actually a question and said, why the name .cop Comics? Well, a little history about myself. I'm actually a retired New York City police detective and currently find myself employed with a health plan investigating doctors for healthcare fraud. Thus the name .cop Comics. So moving along to the topic of whether or not you should slab or keep your comics raw. I'm going to approach slabbing a comic or not slabbing a comic as if I was a doctor performing an office exam. So when you go for an office exam, the doctor fills out what's called a progress note or a SOAP note. And a SOAP note is actually an acronym for subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. And that's the way they approach the actual office visit. And that's the way I think you should approach the decision of whether to slab or not slab your comic. So the subjective part or of the decision making is to know your book. How do you feel about the book? Is the book you're slabbing, does it have sentimental value, reasons to you? Is it the first comic you ever owned? Do you just love the cover? Are you slabbing it because you want to flip it? Are you slabbing because it'll increase its value? Are you slabbing it because it will keep it conserved, keep it from getting damaged? So these are the things you need to think about as far as being subjective. How do you feel about that book? Is it a key issue? And so on. Then the objective part, just like with a doctor, when you go into a doctor's office for a visit, the objective part is a doctor actually doing the physical exam, checking out what's purportedly wrong with you. So the objective part of checking out your comic to decide whether to slab it or not would be to examine it. Jot down the largest defects in that book, and then work your way down from there so that you can come up with a grade for that comic. Does it have color breaking creases? Knowing that if it does have a color breaking crease, at least 1/4 of an inch, that the book's going to start out at a 7.5 or less. It's going to go down from there. Okay, if it has additional defects. I use the Overstreet Comic Grading Guide. This is my Bible. But with that said, the two big companies that do slabbing, CGC and CBCS, not in that order, they have their own grading scales that you can print out online, CBCS as well. And again, these aren't the only two grading companies out there. There are companies that are out of the country. There's a third one right in the United States, which I won't mention. But take in mind that they do have their own parameters for grading comics, which differ from the Overstreet guide. Okay. Take note of the page color, any spine ticks, creases, restoration, soiling, foxing, tanning, missing pages or ad clips being clipped out, the Marvel value stamp, and so on. So the objective part is to examine your book. Is it worth slabbing? Again, if it's a super key and its cover is, only hanging on by a staple, it's still going to be valued and increase in value if you do slab it. Plus, it'll preserve it. So keep all these things in mind. Is the book a X-Force 2, second appearance of Deadpool, yet there are millions of copies out there, and it's really not doing any type of value in increasing, and the cost of the grading you're not going to get back. Then there's the next stage is going to be the assessment. So the assessment part of a doctor visit is the doctor determining what's the diagnosis, what's wrong with you. Do you have a flu? Do you have an earache? So in the case of assessing a comic book, you need to determine what's the best grade range you can get for that comic, and understand, your comic will increase. Will the comic increase in value? Is it a key issue? Make this assessment. Is the cost of slabbing worth doing it? Again, it's going to cost you around $45 for a Silver Age book to get slabbed. If you do simple math and you bought a comic for $40 and it's worth $50, and in the slab condition that it's in the graded condition it's in, it's not worth slabbing. All right. But again, if it has sentimental reasons, that's your decision. But if you go through these steps, I think you'll make a more sound decision on whether or not you should slab your book or keep it raw. Again, they use different scales, the different grading companies, so keep that in mind as well. Now, the planned part of a doctor's visit is where he says, all right, you do have an earache, so my plan is to give you eardrops. Or you do have, the flu, my diagnosis is the flu, and now my plan is to give you a Z-Pack or something, all right? With comics, your plan is now going to be, make my decision. Am I going to send it to CBCS? Am I going to send it to CGC? And they're both great grading companies. CBCS has one advantage that I like, which is if you do have a comic that's signed, they will do signature verification. CGC will only do witnessed signatures with the yellow label, and if it happens to have a signature, they're not going to verify that signature, and you're going to get the green label, the qualified label, and it'll just indicate, Joe Quesada written on the cover, or Stan Lee written on the cover, and so on. Again, if you decide on keeping your book raw, again, so your plan might be, I'm not going to slab it, I'm going to keep it raw. So now your decision is going to be, do I want to invest in micro chamber paper and put it in the pages to prevent the acidity from eating away at the comic? Do I want to invest in Mylar and a full backing board, or do I want to do double backing boards? Do I want to use half backs? Do I want to just use regular polypropylene bags? Knowing that I'm going to have to change that every so many years because polypropylene does break down. Again, these are all the plans that you have to make. Again, if you decide you're going to slab, you have to take into account of how you're going to package your books. Are you going to send more than one at a time, which would be cost effective because you have to pay for the shipping to and from, plus the insurance. It does get costly. I think Bueller did a really good video back, I think last month, where he indicated the value of grading and not grading. And it was very advantageous to grade if you got a 9.8. 9.6, I think you did okay, but anything below that and you weren't doing as well. So again, these are things to take into account. Again, if they're super keys, if they're, Death of Gwen Stacy and Amazing Spider-Man 121, then these are books that you want to definitely get graded. But if it's these new books, if it's variants, again, these are decisions you want to make going down the road to whether you should slab or not slab. Again, if you like this content, please hit the like button. And I would appreciate if you subscribe. I'm going to have some new videos coming up. I'm going to do some grading videos. And of course, if I get new books coming in, I'll be showing my hauls. And with that said, I hope you lock up your grails and your keys and you stay safe. Doc Cop out.